First of all, I want to begin by thanking you all students who have had the patience to stick with me this long for 4 lectures. And it's very encouraging to me that young people are interested in listening to an analysis of a topic which is of great consequences to us all. Now, what I want to do now is, instead of starting with the PowerPoint descriptions, let me go to the end of it on the quantitative data quickly and then come back. Now, I first want to start with a historical perspective on. I'm in this quantitative slides. I'm comparing India and China. Now, from the historical perspective, I'm going back to the 19th century. Notice in 1820, the share of world GDP of India and China put together was about close to 50%. Okay. Now, running the clock forward, the projection as by the Nobel laureate Bob Fogel of Chicago, the economic historian, if you read that row, that by 2040, China and India would have 52% of world GDP. So getting back to where they were in 1820, after almost 200 years, we are getting back to what some would say the rightful place of India and China. But I don't want to push that too far. But what is interesting is after the Industrial Revolution and the first wave of globalization started in the late 19th century. Now, if you want to have an idea what the late 19th century first wave of globalization was, you should read John Maynard Keynes' Economic Consequences of the Peace. Now, the peace he was talking about is the peace after the First World War. That's the Versailles Peace Treaty and the peace. And he has a very eloquent description of the world that came to an end and when the First World War broke out in August of 1913. For any of us today, to think of a world that was at that time, where you didn't need a passport, there were no visas, you could move anywhere in the world without a passport or a visa. That's one thing. Second, and Keynes describes it this way, all you have to do if you're interested in a product produced somewhere in the world, all you have to do is go to your nearby trader and say, I want these products. And he says, within a reasonable time, you can expect those products to be delivered at your door, and with no particular effort on your part, except using the newly invented telephone technology to call your trader. Same thing, if you wanted to invest your money, all you have to do is call your broker, and whether you wanted to invest in municipal bonds or you wanted to invest in equity or whatever, all you have to do is only that. And if you wanted to travel, all you needed was bullion. So you go to your bank and collect your pieces of gold, because remember, that was the age of gold standard. And then you don't need passport, visa, you can go anywhere you wanted. So that was the world that came to an end in the First World War. Now, that is the world I'm describing from 1870 to 1913. India's per capita income grew from $533 to $673 during that period of globalization, first wave of globalization. Remember, that was the period of colonial rule in India. And the two things, free trade was our policy because colonial, the rulers wanted that. And second, the semblance of law and order and security had been established, etc., in the country. And so the economy prospered in the sense of increase in per capita income growth. China, on the other hand, didn't enjoy that. Remember China's interior, the Boxer rebellion, this, that, and the whole domestic conflicts to the foreigners and so on and so forth. China missed out the whole thing. Now, during the interwar period, all suffered, and we suffered less so compared to China. You remember China was out, Manchuria was occupied by the Japanese, and we know the problems that China had during the interwar period. So China's income fell. So in 1950, China after revolution, after our independence started, we had a 25% advantage in per capita income over China. So the entire Mao period from 1950 to 1976, but here I have till 1973, China spent merely catching up with India. It didn't gain any ground on India and in the entire Mao period. And all the gain that China had relatively, you see later, came after Deng Xiaoping's reforms. So remember, that corresponds also to our first 30 years after independence, 50 to 1980, that I talked, the first lecture I talked about. So this you have to keep in mind. Both in China and in India, the growth acceleration started only after the economies opened up, hesitantly in India, but much more so in China in the 1978 Mao period. Forget it. Now, besides, the Mao period, again, contrast with India, which Amartya Sen has written about in his book, etc. China suffered the Cultural Revolution, Great Leap Forward, and the famine, where there were 30 million excess deaths. Okay? Now, we didn't have that sort of a major famine. So, and our Amartya attributes it to our having a free press and the democracy. Now, China still doesn't have that, doesn't have either. So, this you have to keep in mind.